rapidly getting colder.
Hey everybody, I just want to do a little bit of a different sort of a video where I do a impromptu voiceover over a 12-hole practice round that I did in score. I just want to show the kind of errors that I'm having typically when I'm throwing. This is not a mic'd up round. And I'm going to attempt to show all my throws and putts for this round. And you're going to see me rethrow and re-putt a few times. But like the rent in New York, my error rate is too damn high.
Okay, here's my block at 3.
So I'm going to be keeping track of my errors for drives, upshots, and putts, hence the little scorecard down below. I think this will help me determine what to focus on the most in the future. This is the line I originally wanted to throw that with, and this was with my Mako 3. And this worked out a lot better than I originally intended. It was about 50 degrees when I was playing here, with about an hour left before sunset, so I didn't spend a whole lot of time thinking before any of my throws, and I ended up throwing that one essentially into the ground. So I grab this disc here, and I go ahead and throw that, and I grip lock a little bit, or late release, whatever you want to call it, then it landed in a decent position. Now here I'm going to attempt an upshot here, and I lost my balance a little bit when I was throwing, therefore I had some early release. So the errors are starting to count up here, and it's already just in the middle of hole 3. I made a little bit of an adjustment. I reoriented myself, and I made sure to release at the right time. And then I putted with my Mako 3, and I got off this hole.
I'm going to try Mystere into the headwind.
I lead off with my Mystere because I've used it well here in a couple previous practice rounds, but for some reason I pulled it over when I let go of the disc.
Try my TL.
So I wasn't really upset with the tree kick per se, but the flight wasn't what I wanted. This was a lot more in line with what I originally intended.
I'm going to try my DX Rhino.
And now I'm lining things up with my Rhino, and this throw worked out perfectly. Basically exactly as I drew it up.
First try.
And a nice little putt, and a lot of what you're seeing here is what I want to happen.
Leopard.
Here I use my favorite disc, the Leopard, and I ended up having a low release because of a mistake I've been doing in my backswing. Basically my arm swings low during the backswing, and then it rises up just before I start the swing, so it ends up allowing me a lot of excess wobble.
I'm just outside the circle, about 35 feet.
And it points into the ground. I end up throwing into the ground too much. The good news is I now know about this issue and I can correct my backswing, but I need to lock it in with repetition and field work. And I didn't really have a problem with that putt. You know, I missed. It wasn't a big deal. It didn't really feel bad. I just wasn't on it 100%. My problem isn't really making a mistake. It's when a throw feels really weird. Because of my high error rate, I only throw floating discs here on hole 6, and you'll see here I start off with my Hydra, and look at that. Here's that problem where I throw an accidental anhyzer. I'm pulling the disc over to the right somehow, and I'm introducing a lot of wobble into my swing, and so the disc basically aggressively turns, and I'm just going to do a putt upshot. I'm not expecting to go into the basket. I'm just trying to get close to it, and I overshoot it. I put a little bit of anhyzer on it, and it basically skirts past the basket. I just put too much on it. And here I'm lining up a putt and taking my time, and then I just overshoot it. I just put too much on it for some reason. So I grab it and I go ahead and re-putt, and sure enough, that putts just normally. Here on hole 7, I've got my G-Star T-Bird, and I'm going to go ahead and throw it down the right gap, and I end up pulling it to the right, similar to the way I did the Dragon and the Hydra. But that's essentially the play for par 3, but without pulling it as much. That's more correct in terms of how I wanted to throw the disc.
Here's a look at a birdie.
And I threw it through the left gap, which is essentially a birdie run.
I had a yip during that.
I did attempt to putt there, and I had a yip in the middle of it, and it caused the disc to drop. So that counts as an error on that putt.
G-Star Mamba.
And now here I am on hole 8. I tried to go the maximum distance I can, and you'll notice I pull a little bit to the right because it's a maximum distance driver, so I think that's where I started this trend of pulling hard.
Here's my animal.
Now the animal I threw a little bit too high, but otherwise I like the amount of power that I had on it, so I correct
Here's my rhino.
with this rhino. That felt perfect, and it put me right next to the basket. All things considered, this first approach with the animal wasn't that bad, but it did go a little too high, hit a branch and fall on the ground, whereas I wanted it to go a little low. Now here in hole 9,
Leopard.
I've got my leopard, and I'm going to go ahead and throw just a straight line, and this basically did exactly the way I wanted. That is a perfect throw in my eyes.
First try. Try this animal.
Now I've got the animal again. I'm starting to use that more for an upshot, and then I throw this a little bit high and to the right. Not too much of an error, so I don't really consider it one. It landed next to the basket, and it largely did what I wanted. Even though it was a touch bit too high and a touch bit too late, it was within a range of error I was comfortable with, and essentially did what I wanted.
Mako 3.
Here in hole 10, I've got my Mako 3, and this is what I like to do. And you see how the arm swoops low and then it pulls up, and it swoops up just after or during the full extension. That's what produces the wobble. The disc becomes less stable, and it ends up turning to the right.
This is not a shot that I made in error. It just landed in a bad spot.
Now this drive here, I didn't really have a problem with per se. I was otherwise happy with the throw. It's just that I did note that issue where in post I noticed I pulled down during the backswing, brought it up before full extension. Here's a good putt that felt and did exactly what I expected. You're going to start noticing a pattern here in hole 11 pretty quick. And I'm throwing essentially all my leopards and leopard 3s. Centurions are the same mold as the leopard 3. And all these drives are in error as I keep essentially doing the same thing. Even though I'm trying to correct a little bit more, I'm still ending up with the same flight path. Releasing a tiny bit too early and then hitting a tree. And after the 4th tree hit, I said that was enough. And I went ahead and decided to throw from here. And here I am trying to throw a flat shot with the Mako, but knowing that I'll pull it to the right, I let go. I early released, but it did the accidental Anheuser thing, and so what you end up is that. I try to throw a little correction here flat with the Hydra, but I did the bad swing, and it basically accidentally Anheusered. Did the same thing with this Rock X3, but I threw it a little bit harder. It's a bit more overstable and faster, so the spin rate ended up stabilizing the disc and it ended up landing over here. So I go ahead and try to make a putt. That was just fine. A little low, but I didn't consider that to be an error. It didn't feel weird. It didn't have any yips.
Mako 3.
Now I'm going to throw some mids off the tee here. That largely did what I wanted it to, but I would have liked to have thrown the Rock X3 here. So try to duplicate that line with the Rock X3 and see what I can do. And I ended up doing a slight correction. I didn't pull it as much as that Mako, but I still don't really consider that an error because that was about 95% of what I wanted, and it didn't feel weird. It wasn't perfect, which is fine. Here's me doing a patent pending. I'm not really good at those, so I didn't really consider that an error per se, considering I'm still learning and my expectations are low with that. But that wasn't a good throw, but it wasn't one that I would consider a significant error on my part. And then here's a putt with the Aviar. That's just fine. Again, I don't consider that one an error because I just missed the putt. So bottom line is, looking at these scores, I need to work on my drives the most, followed by upshots, and putting seems to be what betrays me the least.
Leopard.
Now in this hole 13, I'm just unloading a bunch of drivers, but you're going to see a lot of the same things with these drives. Even though I throw with hyzer, I pull on them a little bit so it basically flips them up. This is not the same as the correct drive. There's a swoop in the backswing, and I pull to the right on my release, and you can even hear my toe drag as I'm throwing. And those are things I can work on in the future. So primarily my drives are the big problem, followed by shorter distance throws, and a lot of the same problems exist between the two. So I'm going to have to fundamentally work on my grip, my swing, my backswing, and I've also got to work on getting my disc into the power pocket, because I notice the disc starts leaving the power pocket before it really gets in there. It just barely touches the power pocket, then leaves late. But most of these drives I don't really consider that good. There's only really a couple drives that I like here, and you're going to see those at the end. So with all that said, I want to thank you very much for watching this special video of mine. Just want to kind of let y'all know what I'm working on behind the scenes. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great day. Centurion Mamba.